So everyone, welcome to this event. This is a LinkedIn Live event called Westminster Schools Top 10 Hits. And a hit is a high impact teaching strategy. So my name is Richard Andrew. I'm an education consultant and I run Learn, Implement, Share. And we specialise in inspiring teachers to tweak their approach so that they more powerfully foster agency in students, especially within mathematics departments. And if you'd like some information on how we run department-wide PD for maths teachers, or for any teachers for that matter, feel free to reach out and we can get in touch. But this session is not about me and Learn, Implement, Share, because today I have with me Angela Phillips, who is the lead teacher and director of teaching at Westminster School in Adelaide, my home city, in Australia. Now, Angela and I met on the Zooms about a year ago, and Angela was also a guest on one of our first events that we ran called Maintaining Assessment Integrity in the Age of ChatGPT. A couple of logistics. This is going to be a roughly 30-minute event, and it can't go too much longer than that. Feel free to put questions in the chat if you have any, and we'll do our best to answer those. And Fred's just joined us, so hi, Fred. And as I understand it, Angela's helped develop the top 10 hits for Westminster teachers. And again, a hit is a high impact teaching strategy. Now, the top 10 hits are clear learning goals, collaboration and group work, assessment for learning, clear and concise explanations, variety of tasks and stimulus, consistency and clear expectations, and differentiation. But there's only 7 there, and that's because we're going to cover the other 3, which are, well, we're going to try to cover all 3. We've only got half an hour, so we'll see how we go. Relationships, metacognition, and real-world relevant purposeful content. So, Angela, you might want to just give a 30-second quick resume of how you got to where you are now. But and I know that you want to start off talking about the World Economic Forum and what they're saying about education. So I'll just hand over to you, Angela, for welcome aboard. Thanks for joining.
Well, thank you, Richard, for having me. It's lovely to be here and chat to you again. My journey to where I am now has been quite diverse. So I started, as you can probably tell by my accent, I'm not a native Australian. So I started my career as an accountant. Was training to be an accountant for Ernst & Young. Wasn't loving it, wasn't really for me. So I jumped into teaching after some advice from lots of different people. One of which said I was bossy, so I'd make a great teacher. So I still hold that quite firmly. Very correct. So I started teaching in the UK in a city called Bradford. I worked in a special measures school, so that means a school that's in a category which means they need to improve. And I was an advanced skills teacher, which means I work part-time for the school, and I worked part-time for the local authority as a consultant, and went round and worked with a range of different schools and a range of different scenarios. So I've had a little bit of a diverse range of experience. I then 11 years ago emigrated to Australia with my family, so with my husband and my 2 sons. A brilliant move all round. The whole family love it here, and Adelaide and Australia is absolutely our home. If you ask our children if they're English or Australian, they both say Australian. Absolutely. Really? So yeah. So
and I must say that the Adelaideans actually speak proper English, unlike the East Coasters. No, it is a more English influenced accent. It's a little bit less twangy than the Australian. Anyway, I just thought I'd say that.
It is true. And it's funny because we do a lot of video in our lessons, and it's only when I listen back to myself teaching that I realise that I don't sound Australian. I think in my head, I think that I am Australian. So I don't realise that I've got an accent.
I could give you a few lessons on how to really speak Australian, but not for this event.
Yeah, no. So that excuse me. That's really funny. So when I arrived in Australia, I got a job and I worked part-time teaching maths because my children were little and we had just arrived, didn't know anybody in the country. So I worked 0.6 at Westminster. That they were very kind and gave me a job when I first arrived, and I worked part-time until my children were a bit older, and then I became the head of maths at Westminster. Then I became the pedagogy coach at Westminster, and then head of pedagogy and digital delivery, and now I'm the director of teaching. So still at Westminster. So I've had two very diverse long-term educational experiences in my employment. So I've been at Westminster, this is my 11th year, and I worked in the UK at Queensbury, where I was an advanced skills teacher for 13 years. So that's the majority of my career. I've worked at a couple of other schools before that. So I feel very fortunate to have worked in two schools that I love, but for very, very different reasons.
Fantastic.
But I think it's given me a really diverse experience as an educator.
Cool. So, Angela, you mentioned in the pre-chat, you mentioned about the World Economic Forum, and you wanted to say something about what they're saying about education, because that relates to what you're doing at Westminster.
Oh, absolutely. And I think as educators, we have got to be the type of learners that we want our students to leave school being. We've got to model that for our students. And that's something that I'm really passionate about lifelong learning and making sure that we are constantly, as educators, striving to improve what we do to improve the outcomes of students. And long gone are the days where a teacher stood at the board, went through the work, and then students did questions in silence, and then you wrapped it up and then they left the room. Those days are completely gone. And I think with how our students are and how they're learning and how they have a very different access to information that we had when we were children, I think we've got to make sure that we're taking all that into consideration. And I remember, I'm a passionate mathematician, but I remember people saying to me a long time ago that you would never, you need to make sure you understand this maths because you're not going to be walking around with a calculator in your pocket. We're now all walking around with a phone, which is a calculator in our pocket. So that's really a difficult move for some people. What we actually used to teach and how we teach is not right for our students anymore. So we've got to take that into consideration. So with the World Economic Forum, they've published a paper this year, and I love it. It's called Defining Education 4.0. So if you haven't read it, it's about the future of learning, and it actually looks at the different domains really of learning, and they talk about abilities and skills, attitudes and values, and knowledge and information, and then they're the level 1 skills, and then they break it down even further into level 2 and level 3. And when you actually look at the level 1, 2 and 3 skills, linking from knowledge and information, there's only actually one thing, which is discipline specific information. The rest of them, I think there's about 26, are all about how students learn and and all the skills that they need. So all the cognitive skills, the interpersonal skills, the physical skills, the interpersonal skills, and the extrapersonal skills. So they're absolutely great. Yeah, it's a fantastic article. And I think that really highlights I think, the diversity of what we need our students to be able to do. And chalk and talk and teaching content is not what we do as educators anymore. So I think that is the first big takeaway.
I think you're saying that's what Westminster's not doing anymore, because I mean I'm dealing with a lot of schools from across the globe, and there's still that. I mean, I know there's a lot of amazing work going on, but I still think there is more than you might believe who are still hanging on to that old model, or kind of tweaking around the edges, rather than we were talking a bit before about the difference between being traditionally teacher-centric and diving into a more student-centric, more facilitatory role, which is quite a paradigm shift for anyone really. But anyway.
Absolutely, it's a really big shift, and I think as educators we need to be really honest and own that we don't have all the answers, and as modeling the learning that we want our students to be able to take on. It's like when ChatGPT came in, nobody has a clue how to deal with this. And if there's an educator that goes, I've got this sorted, I know what I'm doing, they're not being truthful. We know that that's not the case. We're learning as the technology develops, and we're trying to problem solve constantly around this. And I think everybody in the classroom will say, yes, absolutely, this is causing lots of problems. And potentially, if it's not causing problems for them, it's because they haven't actually looked at it and they haven't embraced they haven't embraced what's going on and potentially not even realised that their students are using this type of technology. So we've got to be really open to that.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I'm getting comments through on the PD that we run, and there is with maths teachers there's often quite a bit of fear in, it sounds great, Richard, this student-centered thing, but I'm just, I can't see quite how it's going to work, and I understand the fears, but the thing is, for anyone who is concerned, you'd agree with this, it is so much more fun as a teacher. Forget about the student. I know I shouldn't say this, but forget about the students. It's way more fun teaching in a facilitatory way. And not only that, once you have more student-centric approach, therefore kids have got more ownership over what they're doing, that opens the door for you to teach those exceptional lessons that often happen spontaneously, right? Because you can go down these avenues, and that's what we all signed up for. But if you're going to hang on to the past, those opportunities rarely come. So anyway, there's my little plug. We're off tangent.
No, you're absolutely right, and I think that's the key. But going back to the hits, I think we've got, as you said, our top 10 hits, and I think the key thing about our we call it Pedagogy at Western. It's our teaching playbook. And I think the key thing around that is the fact that it was devised by our staff based on research.
But can I say, none of this is rocket science, is it? I mean, no. When you look at them, it's all common sense. And so what I'm thinking, and I don't know much about what you're doing specifically with this, but it's like you're shining the light on 10 key areas that make perfect sense, but let's unpack these and really do them well. Is that right?
That's exactly right. So when we came up with the top 10 hits, every single teacher within the school was involved. We ran workshops. Everybody could work together in a collaborative way to say what worked for them in the classroom, why it worked, unpack what they were talking about, and we left it really open. And then we just kept narrowing and narrowing and narrowing until the staff, every staff member came up with these 10 key things that make the biggest difference and the biggest impact on our students. And to quote Hattie, we're looking at, making sure that we've got collective teacher efficacy. So we're all working together for the same thing and an agreed thing. And that's got such a ginormous effect size on the impact for students that you'd be silly not to do this. So from our hits, what we've then done, we've built our playbook around that, which does like a bit more of a deep dive into each of the hits, which I think has been really important.
So you didn't have to be 10. 10 just came out. No, right. So let's, I'm aware that time is ticking rapidly past. Which one would you like to start off with? I think relationships was the one.
Relationships. Yeah, okay. I think.
So you said your number one priority is relationships, productive, respectful relationships. So I'm assuming that's teacher-student, teacher-teacher, and student-student. Anyway,
absolutely.
Yes. So what does that look like?
And I was over the moon actually, because when we looked at the hits, the first thing, the most important thing for every group that worked together was the relationship. So that came out as the biggest thing that people wanted to make sure that we focused on, because we are a very, very relational school.
Right.
So we wanted to make sure that we knew and we could define what that was. So we want positive, productive, professional relationships between all our community members, where we have great collaboration skills, we have great communication skills, we can all critically reflect and feedback to each other. So these are the key things that we really want to focus on as a community. And we want our community to be able to live, and that's students, parents, teachers, everybody involved in the school, around those school values. And we're a uniting church school as well, so we wanted to bring in the key things that make us special as a school.
Yeah. I was just going to ask, how long have you been working with these 10? How long have the top 10 hits been up? Like
Yeah, they started, we formalized them in 2020. So
Okay.
this is our, so we're moving forward with them. So we're getting there slowly. So it's the end of 2020 when this came about. So we're getting there slowly. And it was interesting. It came about because I was having a conversation with somebody, and we were like, we're not a project-based learning school, we're not a direct instructional school. What are we? So, what is our pedagogical approach? And I was like, it's not for me to decide. It's not for Andrea Sherwood, who's a director of learning, to decide. It's for actually our staff to decide what we do and our students. And that's why it's so important, because we wanted everybody to feel that they had some ownership, but then we've got a clear vision about who we are as educators and what is important for us in our school.
Right. So could you, are you confident, what am I trying to say? You've been there through this whole time. Can you notice a tangible change, say just in the staff vibe in the school? It's been dramatic,
massively,
yes? Really?
Massively so.
So can you describe, can you sort of paint a very quick picture, like before and after, without naming names, but like to give us an idea?
Absolutely. I think when I first arrived at Westminster, it was we were potentially, and bearing in mind this is a long time ago, it was quite a traditional school.
Right.
So you'd walk in, the classrooms were in rows. The head of maths at the time, when I came to work part-time, asked me he said, what role do you see a textbook has in the maths classroom? And I said, it's one of many resources. And he was like, oh, you will be teaching from the textbook if you get the job here. And I said, we'll see. So that was my first introduction. And I went home and said to my husband, oh my goodness, I don't know whether this school is for me, because that is just not who I am as an educator. And we are not anywhere near that school anymore.
Right.
Our student, and even the spaces, we have reinvigorated all the spaces. We've got some new buildings. All our learning spaces are collaborative working spaces. We don't have rows. We have students working together. We have movable furniture. We have glass on just about every classroom. We've got interconnecting doors, so people are in and out of each other's classrooms with team teaching. There's so much going on that the vibe is just completely different.
Allow me to be a devil's advocate. This is not what I'm thinking, but allow me to role play here and say, well, look, this all sounds good in theory, Angela, and I'm sure the students have a lot of fun. But what about getting down to that? What about the real learning? Like, is it just a fun fest, or like, how does the real teaching happen?
And that's the really big question, because I think at the end of the day, our results have gone up. So our results are improving. So you do always get, and it's interesting because we were talking about this before. Can I
just interject? Was that the idea of the results going up, or the aim of, where did that rank on the order of priority of what you were trying to bring about in this change? Did that even register or not?
It didn't. Well, it always registers, I suppose, in the back of your mind that you don't want to do anything that's detrimental to student outcomes. We only want to increase student outcomes, whether that's in engagement, well-being, or academic results. We want to make sure that we are constantly improving what we do for the kids, because if it has a detrimental effect, then it's not a great strategy.
But the school's not going, right, we need to improve our score, so what can we do about it? It was
absolutely
we need to be a better educational institution, and holy moly, we've got better results now 3 years down the track or whatever.
Well, and I'm going to be really honest. We had a principal change about 6 years ago, and our principal is called Simon Shepherd, and he is absolutely inspirational and revolutionary, and he has completely turned the school around. He has changed what we do completely. And our school we've always got great results, and we've always produced excellent people. So when Westminster All Scholar, they are great individuals. Don't get me wrong, they're fantastic. But we want them to go out and not only be great individuals with great academic results, we also want them to know why they're, know themselves and know their learning and be able to take it and apply it to any context and have that world view so that they can go out and influence and change the world in a positive way. And that's what we're aiming for our students.
Do you have any teachers who are, well, I'm sure you do, who are less open to this? Okay, we've got to be more relational with each other and with their students. And if the answer is yes, without obviously calling anyone out, are there some kind of tricks that you use to win people over, whether it be students or staff?
It's really interesting. I think every school, I think, has got the same problem. You've got people, well, not problem. We've got great people who jump on board and go, right, I'm going to run with change. I'm one of those people. I love change. I love learning new things. And then we've got people who get dragged along a little bit. And then you've got the people who are stuck at the bottom, who are not wanting to move and want to do things the way they've always done. We've got a very small minority of people in that category. And it's just having lots of support around and making sure that as other people move, I think, I don't call it peer pressure because that's not the right thing. If you stay as you are and everybody else is growing, you're actually not staying where you are, you're decreasing. So your teacher quality is actually decreasing as everybody else increases. So we have lots of support available. So we offer lots of professional learning and we have a really great coaching program. Yeah. So all the teachers are able to opt in and have a coach, which has been fantastic. So that's brilliant. But I think the big thing is it's come from the staff. And I think like with pedagogy at Western, our top 10 hits, these have been determined by our teachers, so we've got the buy-in. So the amount of teachers who haven't bought in is very, very low because everybody's opinion is valid.
Do you know what I love about your top 10 hits? Because I've seen, I'm not going to mention names, but I've seen other systems, are we doing the such and such model? And so I go online and I have a look at this and there's like 7 bubbles of 15 things in each bubble, and it's like incredibly over the top and overwhelming. I'm thinking, how can you make any headway with any? It's just like teachers are busy. Yeah. If you're going to make a school-wide change, it needs to be understandable, common sense. Obviously, it needs to be research backed, but it can't be 120 points that you've got to think about.
No.
But do you agree? You've seen those?
Absolutely. And I think the thing with the top 10 hits, these are what we've been doing for a long time. This isn't new, but we're focusing on going, which of these are you really good at and which actually do you need to develop? Because nobody is amazing at everything. We've all got things that we have areas of strength and areas of growth. And actually, for somebody to go, oh, my learning goals are, I'm not actually setting challenging learning goals. I'm not comfortable around that, but I have great relationships. That doesn't make you less of an educator, but the fact that you can reflect on that and go, this is my area that I need to work on. And these are the things that are important. Yeah. I think it just sharpens everything because then people know, oh, actually, I am struggling to link the content to the real world. So that may be why my engagement isn't quite as high as it needs to be. So I need to work with somebody who's great at that. So I think it's about sharing the expertise that we already have across school to allow everybody to raise as educators.
We've got 5 minutes. Maybe we should do another one of these. And if you're,
I'm sorry.
If you're up to it.
I do talk a lot.
No. But we've barely scratched the surface. Can I suggest we talk about metacognition? I don't think we're going to get to the other.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So we have been very fortunate. We have been working with the 4C's Transforming Schools team, and I've showed you these earlier. These books have changed my life. Right. So they are just outstanding. Okay. And they're just amazing individuals. And we have done a lot of work over the past 2.5 years with the 4C's team. And it's about making sure that when we're teaching, we are not teaching content, but we are obviously teaching content, but we're teaching the students the skills to be able to understand how they learn. Because you don't learn by osmosis. You have to learn how to learn in order to be able to then go and apply that to any context. So that's when you get the deep learning and the transfer. So working with the 4Cs team has been amazing.
So what are some specifics that teachers are doing now that they might not have been doing a few years ago that foster the kids to be thinking about their learning?
So we've done quite a lot of work with the 4Cs team. So what we've got in school, we've got the learning dispositions, which have come from the 4Cs. And what we've asked every staff member to do is pick one of the learning dispositions. So it could be focus or grit or teamwork or empathy or making an express meaning. So people have picked something that they're really interested in. And then they have done a deep dive with the students. So they teach that skill using the 4Cs pedagogies. They teach that skill as a discrete skill. This is how we're gonna learn about focus.
Can you just
and
pick
then
one?
they move on.
Can you pick one and give a specific example?
So, for example, I'm thinking of our year 7. We've got a year 7 program called FUS, which is called The Future Is Us. And this it's a student agency project, and the students in that course, they can pick anything they like. So I run one of the units. It's called Trash to Treasure, and they take trash and make it into something amazing. So as part of that, we teach the kids skills. So for example, focus. If we had a lesson on focus, we actually say today we're going to be learning about focus and how to focus better, how to self-regulate, and how to be confident. And that we actually teach the kids the skills, and then we'll say, oh, how are you now going to apply this in your FUS learning? So we have 3 double lessons a week with our year 7s for FUS. They have 1 learning disposition, so 1 on learning to learn, and then they have 2 lessons on their project. So that's really been very powerful, because then the kids they will come in and you go, well, remember we learned about grit and how to be gritty. So now you've come up with this problem. Tell me how you're going to apply those skills. So we're able to quote the learning back to the kids. And it goes even further. It's about having that common language across the staff. And we're not there yet. Obviously, we're work in progress, and it's a long journey. But having that common language across the school is where we're aiming for, around metacognitive strategies. And small things like my year 12 class will say to me, we need to do it 3 times with 3 sleeps. So they know to retain information. They're not going to retain it unless they've seen it in three different scenarios with a sleep in between. And that's the minimum for them to have a chance of retaining it. So they're starting to make those connections about how you can't look at something once and then expect to understand.
Can I just share something that I think fits in with this? It's not, because when I was tinkering with metacognition and I didn't have those sorts of texts to follow, I was just sort of following my own nose. But I realized, it's very easy in a mathematics class to have kids go through the motions but not really be aware of what they know and what they don't know. And so that was where I was focusing on. And so I would simply, and because it was more student-centric, and I was doing a lot of mini lessons, so I'd say, someone just asked me a question and I would go, okay, everyone just stop for a sec. Phil has just asked me about question 2 on page whatever, or if it's there or if it's on a worksheet, whatever. Who knows that they know this? Who knows that they know? And hands up, right? Okay, you 7, you can work on ahead or you can listen, so up to you. But the rest of you, eyes this way. And partly that was an organizational thing, but I realized that's actually a really good question to ask, because then the kids have to ask themselves, do I know? So I'm giving them the choice whether to tune in or not to tune in. And it meant then I'm not boring the pants off the kids who don't need to hear this. And that I sort of worked on that, and that became a bit of a thing. And I think a lot of maths teachers can benefit from that.
It's interesting you say that, and this is where I think the hits interlink. So one of our hits is assessment for learning. So we've got assessment for learning, assessment of learning, and we've got people doing different strategies. So all our students within maths in the senior school use a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So they have to say how confident they are with it. So if there are 5, super confident, 4, pretty confident, 3, okay, 2, like, what is the crazy lady talking about? 1, I have no idea. And then the kids work on different things based on where they are. So if they're 5 super confident, crack on, 5 or 4. But then if you're a 1, come over and let's go through this again and let's work in a group.
Yeah.
So we've got all these different
You can apply that
things
to almost anything.
Absolutely. And from that, which is great, the kids are actually assessing their own learning. So they're saying, actually, how confident am I? And you'll see kids going, and they're really considering where they're at.
So that's not specifically teaching about learning, but it's the awareness is everything. Awareness in life is everything. So if you got, because I used to see I did a period of time where I was doing a lot of casual teaching, and I'd walk into these classes and you just see these kids, they're just biding their time. That you know, like, oh, if I chunk out 10 questions, I'm closer to getting out the door. You know, that there's no awareness. That's, I guess, what I was you know, moving against, and that it was a metacognition assignment I used to use, which is like just practicing for the next assessment task. But they weren't marked on. They had to mark their own work, so they didn't get a mark on that. They had to have a confidence rating on each question. You know, if you got this question tomorrow in an assessment, how confident are you? But they had to write a comment as well, and a lot of them got right into it because it, you know, and so that was part of the rubric so they scored on doing that as well as the mathematics. You know, so there's lots of things we can do. Hey, look, I think I'm going to. On the LinkedIn, I'm going to try and twist your arm to do another one of these sometime, because there's so much we could cover here. But I love this. Sounds fantastic, and as I said, I love the simplicity of it all. So if there's someone here who is listening to this either live or on the replay, who is in a position where they could implement something, that the idea is to get complete buy-in with the staff. Like I guess you had lots of workshop situations where like, what is important, what are you good at, what do you know works well in the classroom, and you keep thrashing that out until you narrow down to a number of categories, and then someone's got to drive this. So who's the driver here? Is it the principal? Is it you? Is it a leadership team that's driving it?
I think it's a joint driver, which is great. It's myself and Andrea Sherwood. So I'm the director of teaching, and Andrea Sherwood is the director of learning. And because those two things are completely interlinked, we work really closely together.
Yeah,
so we absolutely collaborate. But the driver has been the staff. And I think that's the big thing. We have it, and there were certain things that we were like, I'd really like that one to go in above, but we haven't tinkered with it. We have absolutely gone with what the staff wanted.
Oh, cool.
So I think we need to make sure that we're giving our teachers the autonomy to go, these are the things that actually really work, and listen to them.
Right. Hey, everyone, we have to wind this up because Angela's got a hair appointment that she's got to bolt off to in about 5 minutes. So I'd like to have a quick chat with Angela after this, in just her and I. So thanks for joining us. Awesome. So thanks, everyone.